This is Gemara and Yoma Daf Mem Zayin as we begin a new parak, the fifth parak of Yoma. The learning of the entire Chabura should be sponsored as a special schos shedach for Yisrael Chaim and Devaira. And Mirza Hashem, the entire Chabura's learning should be a tremendous schos that he should find this zivag hagain with ultimate clarity. Of course, all Chayim man Vega Chaim Sar some seem raise the service can anti Basin to Chaysay Yisrael Mendeles Vetter Shalei Sham as Naomi Shavik Shechana Shmo Bandil Dimin Khanwiz and Chayyim is nearly brachos of Musa Dinain Vashin Mendes and Tzvim Vega Vora. As well as a we begin a new parak. We're in the middle of the avodah of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. We're now getting up to the intricate, the difficult parts of the avodah, as we're going to see today, tomorrow. That which is labeled as the most or of the most difficult processes, services, items that the Kohen Gadol has to do on Yom Kippur. So let's dive right in. Says the Mishnah, Hoitziu loi es hakaf. What happens? They bring him the kaf. The kaf is a type of spoon, the esamachta, and the shovel. What does he do? So he's brought a spoon and a shovel. What does he do right now? Chafan meloi chafnav. He scoops up with a full scoop. He's scooping with his hands. He's scooping the ketayres with his hands. And what is he doing with the ketayres? The ketayres which is sitting in the shovel. V'nasan l'teicha kaf. And he pours it into the spoon. Hagadol, into this big, large I'm sorry. Very interesting. There's no precise measurement he has to take. If he has big hands, it's a big scoop. If he has small hands, it's a small scoop. And that is the measurement. He takes the shovel with his right hand, and he takes the spoon with his left hand. So we're going to have many pictures. Baruch Hashem. Let's begin. As you see in front of you, the machata. The machata is he's holding, you see another kohen holding a machata filled with ketayres, a separate kohen holding the kaf, the spoon. The kohen gadol goes, he sticks his hands in, he takes a full hand's worth. We're going to see the exact way he takes that soon later today, Mirza Hashem, and he puts it inside the kaf, this spoon-like item. And of course, the measurement is, now, if you just take careful note at this picture, you'll see in the top right corner, you see there's another kohen there. He's sitting there stirring the blood. That's on the fourth Roivad Ravi, like we learned the other day. He's sitting there stirring the blood of the par. Also, if you see next to him on the floor, very particularly, you see that there's another shovel with coals. Now, what the Kohen Gadol is going to do, as you see, he picked up that shovel with the coals in his right hand. The left hand, as the kaf, is a spoon with the ketayres. Obviously, everyone's wondering, that's strange, because the ketayres should be in the right hand, the more chashiv hand. The Gemara will discuss, and with that, he enters into the Beis Hamikdash to do the avodah. You also see how beautifully they place in this picture the string around his leg, which, of course, was the way they knew if the Kohen Gadol was successful in the avodah. More to come. Says the Gemara, Machata? Tanale. Why did they say that we bring him out a machta? But we already taught that what? Not less a machta, v'ala l'reisham mizbeach. We already taught that he takes the machta, the shovel, he goes to the top of the mizbeach, v'chayt v'yorid. And he takes some of those coals from there, and he comes down. So why does it say they're bringing him a shovel? So we already know the answer based on the pictures, but let's let the Gemara develop itself. Answers the Gemara, two different shovels. One shovel, which was sitting on the floor, that's the shovel of the coals. He was holding, they bring him a new empty shovel, which they filled with ketayres. The Tana's learned to the price, so you see you like kaf reikon, an empty spoon. I'm calling it a spoon, it's more like that golden, kaf. Milishkas hakelim, from the place where they held all the kelim, umachta gedusha shal ketayres, and a shovel filled with ketayres, milishkas beis haftinas. Of course, we learned extensively about the beis haftinas, the family that made the ketayres. The room was called based on that family. That's what they bring out. So there's two different shovels. We have the shovel on the floor with the coals. We have the shovel that they brought out with the ketayres. And we continue, says the Gemara about 10 lines down. He scoops and he puts it into the large spoon. I'm sorry, I did it wrong again. He puts it into the spoon. If he has big hands, it's big. Small. And that is the measurement. Says the Gemara, why is there a spoon? What should he do? He should stick his hands in, take the ketayres, and walk in with the ketayres in his hands. That's what the Torah says. So why is he putting it into a spoon? We'll re-explain the Gemara with a picture in the moment. It says Gemara mishum d'lo yafshir, because it's impossible. What's he going to do? There's a physical impossibility. Why? Because how should he has to get the coals in. He has to bring the coals into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. He has to bring the Keteiros into Kodesh HaKadoshim. If the Keteiros are in his 2 full handfuls, where does he get the coals? Hey, Chinavid, Nail, V'Hadr Nail, he should go in and go back in again. Meaning, go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, put down the Keteiros, come back, bring the coals. So let it go in one time. Maybe he should hold the Keteiros in his hands. And what should he do with the machta? He should take the machta and put it in his teeth. Hold the coals in his mouth and take the keteiros in his hands, which, parenthetically, we're going to see he is going to use his mouth. But says the Gemara, Olav Layil, and then he should go in. What's he going to do when he gets there? Again, what's he going to do? One more time. He should, no, I read it wrong. I'm sorry. 2 times in one day. Let's go back. Says the Gemara one more time. Take the keteiros b'chafnav in his hands. V'nachte lemachta, and he shall put the coals on top of the keteiros. Allah v'liayil, and then he should go in. Again, so this stage of the Gemara, we're before the mouth. I'm sorry. He's holding the keteiros in his hands, and we're suggesting maybe take the coals, put it on top of his hands, and now we'll be holding the keteiros and the coals. How he won't burn his hands, we'll figure it out. Walk in. Says the Gemara, what's he going to do when he gets to the Kodesh HaKadoshim? He's sitting there with keteiros and coals. How's he going to get the keteiros on top of the coals? It's not possible. Says the Gemara, okay, fine. So I'll give you another suggestion. He should take it in his teeth, but the shovel in his teeth. He should take the shovel in his teeth and place it on the ground, and then he'll put the keteiros in it. Says the Gemara, that's inappropriate. You're going into God's innermost chambers, and you're going to start taking the shovel of coals in your mouth. That is inappropriate. You can't do that. Since it's impossible, we do like we find by the Nesiim, which Rashi points out the pasuk 4 lines from the white lines on the top says, Kavachas Malaya Keteiros. And that is what they do. So just to point out what the suggestions were over here, is basically we're suggesting why in this stage, why did he take the handfuls and put it inside the spoon? Rather, what he should do is, he should take the handfuls and walk in with it straight. And instead of taking the coals in his right hand and the spoon in his left hand, he should hold the coals in his 2 hands, and then the question, hold the keteiros in his 2 hands. And then the question is, what is he going to do with the coals? That is what the Gemara just dealt with. I'm sorry, and actually over here you see the Gemara says chayfen v'chayzer v'chayfen, and maybe, which is, that's going to be the next stage of the Gemara. Says the Gemara, you take the machta, the coals in the right hand, and the keteiros in your left hand, which you already pointed out is slightly unique. We would think that the keteiros, which is of course more chashiv, should go in the right hand, which is the Gemara's kasha. Yitziva ba'ardo v'girurim shmei shemaya. It's counterintuitive. It's topsy-turvy. It makes no sense. Well, the words literally mean Yitziva ba'ardo. Yitziva is the citizen, the one who lives there. He should be on the ground. The Giyura, the strange one, the alien, he should be up in the heavens. The opposite. The citizen should get the better ranking. Basically, that's the way the Gemara asks, that it's backwards. You should hold the keteiros in your right hand. Answers the Gemara, an interesting answer, similar to what we just said, that we're being very practical. Zuma rubav zumo atas. This one is more, and this one is less, meaning the coals are heavier. Since the coals are heavier, it goes in his right hand. A similar application like we keep on seeing, like Rashi says, since it's heavier, it's going in his right hand, because we don't want the Kohen Gadol to stress and struggle throughout the difficult avodah. And even if they weigh the same, and even if they weigh the same, like the story of Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis, what's the story of Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchis? The Gemara is going to explain in a moment. He had tremendous hands, so therefore he had tons of keteiros. He had a huge spoon, more even than the coals. Says the Gemara, this one is hot and this one is cold. That line is a bit debatable whether it belongs in the Gemara, but let's leave it for now. Now let's discuss what happened to Yishmael ben Kimchis. What was so special? Amru Lav Yishmael ben Kimchis. Shaya chayvin arba'as kabin b'malei chafnav. He had 4 kabin full in his 2 handfuls. V'aymer kol hanashim zardu v'zard ima ala legag. And he explained, you know why I have such tremendous hands? Because every woman has zered, but my mother, her zered, which we'll see what zered means in a moment, her zered goes to the roof. It's through the moon. It was incredible. incredible. Says the Gemara, what's he referring to? Ikadiamri, one shot is a bar son. He's referring to a type of cereal, a type of oatmeal that his mother used to eat. It's great for a chayla. So his mother treated herself incredibly, and therefore, when she was pregnant with him, she gave birth to this incredible Rishmal ben Kimchas with these huge hands due to the oatmeal that she ate. One shot, the other shot has to do with his father. He had a special potent Shechla Zera, that what created this Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchas with big hands. Because Rav Avua Rami Ksev, Vatazreini Chayal HaMilchama, Vatazreini David HaMelch, Tazreini without the Aleph, meaning we strengthened and we girded ourselves for battle. Uksev, but then the next, another pasuk David HaMelch says, is Hama'azreini Chayal HaMilchama, Hama'azreini with a Aleph. Says the Gemara, first wide line number, David HaMelch, Baruch Hu, B'nei Shalaylam, Zerisani, Vizira Tani. Tani, excuse me, you winnowed me and you girded me. What's winnowed? Winnow is a type of separating, sifting, referring to the fact that the semen, that the sperm, that the zera was sifted through was very, very potent, similar to what we find here by Rabbi Shmuel ben Kimchas. Says the Gemara, a few more stories. Again, let's remember, why did we get involved? Because we're discussing the handfuls of Ketores. We're saying that he holds the Ketores in his left, the shovel in the right. Why? Because the shovel's heavier. And the Gemara said a Chiddush, even if the shovel's not heavier. What would be the case if the shovel's not heavier? If the Ketores is heavier. How would the Ketores be heavier? If he has tremendous hands, big spoon. Who had big spoon? Who big hands? Rishal ben Kimchas. Why? Either his mother had good oatmeal or his father had good zera. And now we have some more stories. Says the Gemara in the second wide line, Amr Lav Rishal ben Kimchas. One time on Yom Kippur. Fascinating. On Yom Kippur, in the middle of the Avodah, he was the Kohen Gadol of Rishal ben Kimchas. Then he went outside to talk with an Arab. Says the Gemara, Aravi Echad B'Shok. Now I said it's Yom Kippur. That's Rashi's pshat. Rashi points out that it was Yom Kippur. There are others that learn Yom is going out of the Avodah and talking to an Arab. So others learn it was Erev Yom Kippur. Difficult to understand. Let's just read Pashup pshat of the Gemara like Rashi. It was Yom Kippur. He was talking to an Arab, and what happened? And the Arab spit a little bit, and a little spittle got in his clothing. So what's the problem? The problem is spit of a guy is tameh. Now the Kohen Gadol became tameh on Yom Kippur, which is a case we've discussed many times. How would a Kohen Gadol become tameh? This would be one unique way. And says the Gemara, what happened? Who was the Skan Kohen Gadol? His brother. Rishal ben Kimchas, his brother, Yeshevav was the Skan. He went and he finished the Avodah. And what nachas? His mother saw two different Kahanim Gedolim of her own children working on one day. And we continue another story. One time he went out to talk with a certain master, again in Yom Kippur, Echad Bashok, and a bit of spit got in his clothing, says the Gemara, a different brother, a different brother also served on the same day. And now, says the Gemara, it sounds like this family is quite incredible. They're all Kohanim Gedolim. Tanu Rabbanan, such a famous Gemara, says the Gemara, made famous by the Zayar, made famous by the Mishnah Berurah, quoting the Zayar, Simon Ayin Hey, very uniquely. Tanu Rabbanan, Shiva Abanim Ayula the Kimchas. There were 7 children that Kimchas had, 7 sons. Ve'kula and Shimshu Beguna Gedolim, they all were Kohanim Gedolim. Amr lo Chachamim, Ma asita shezichiti l'rach. What did you do to merit such an incredible reward that you had 7 Kohanim Gedolim? Amra lahem, she responded, Mi yamai lo yira'u kairas basi klai sairi. My walls of my house, the beams of my house, never saw me uncovered. Here, when she was a married woman, in as much as it's mutter, when she's in the privacy of her own house, to have the beams in her house to see her uncovered hair, a special maila and sneas, the incredible stringency and modesty is what merited 7 Kohanim Gedolim. Amru la harbe asu kein v'lo ya'ilu. Not everyone merited such a thing, but we do see an incredible maila and sneas and modesty. Taisus here points out, okay, it's not for everyone. You can't go crazy. Number 1, Mishnah Berurah points out that it's a maila, it's a wonderful chumrah that one could definitely ascribe to, but of course, Taisus himself points out that obviously it doesn't mean that in the shower and things like that would be ridiculous. It means in the areas where theoretically you could have your hair uncovered, to be machmir, to have it covered. Tanu Rabbanan, says the Gemara, about 10 lines from the bottom, Bekumsai, says the Gemara when it comes to the kaimates. Again, we now have two different actions. We have what we discussed in the Mishnah, the chafina. Chafina is scooping up the keteres, and then we have something called kamitza. Kamitza is by the carbon mincha, the flour. The kamitza is very similar. You're also going to be scooping up the flour, and we're going to see right now the nuances of these halachas. Tanu Rabbanan bekumsai, it says that you take the mincha, the flour, with his kaimetz. There's no specific measurement, but rather it has to do with his hands. Again, just like we saw by the keteres, whatever the size of his hands were, so too by the kaimetz of the carbon mincha. Ibayalu, says the Gemara, are you allowed to make a measure? Is the Kohen Gadol allowed to measure his hands and make a measuring cup for the chafina? For the Ketayres, says the Gemara, by the Ketayres, by the Mincha, I'm sorry, says Bekumsai, his Kaimitz. And so you would think that maybe you could make a measurement. Ella, but explains the Gemara, Miloi Chafnav the Ketayres Samim Daka Loi. Rather, what does it say? It says that he should take his cupped hands of the Ketayres. Says the Gemara, Oidelma, or maybe we should learn. Excuse me, one more time. Something is not working right now. Okay. Says the Gemara, Loi. So maybe not. Or maybe we learned it out from the Kaimetz. So the question is, how comparable is the chafina and the kaimetz? The chafina by the ketayres, like we were discussing in our Mishnah, the ketayres like the kamitza by the mincha, like we're discussing, are they the same? Says the Gemara, Tashema, I'll bring you a proof. That is its measurement. My life should write midah. It's Isa. It sounds like if you want to make a measurement, you're allowed to make a measurement. Seemingly a raya that if you would want to make a measurement the size of the hands for the keteres, it would be allowed. Answers the Gemara, that we learn from this pasuk that this is, you would go again inside the Kodesh HaKodashim, fill up his hands, and then from the spoon, and then put them on top of the burning coals. Says the Gemara, Shmas Mina, we see from here, and this was the picture that we saw fleeting, we'll see in a moment, Chayfin v'chayzer v'chayfin. You have to do the chafina, you have to fill his hands again. De'ilma, says the Gemara, Shem writes alas is mida Isa. Says the Gemara, no, maybe the Mishnah means if he wants to make a measurement, he could. Inami shal yachzer v'shal yaiser. Or maybe the Mishnah means that he should not take any more or less than the amount of his hands, but we do not necessarily have a conclusive proof. But let's just see this proof. Let's just see what the Gemara just said. The Gemara just said that in the Kodesh HaKodashim, he's going to refill his hands. And as you see over here, basically now he took that kaf, he took that spoon inside his mouth, he pours it into his hands, and then he pours it on top of the ketayres. So says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, Miloi Kumsai. Says the Gemara that he has to have a full kaimetz. Again, the kaimetz is by the mincha, the chafina is by the ketayres. Yochel, I would think, and we're going to see pictures of each and every one of these lines, mi bayratz, I would have thought it should be overflowing. Again, referring to the kamitza of the mincha. The kamitza, as we'll see, is 3 fingers and you mark off the ends. Says the Gemara, I would think it should be overflowing. Tamalemer bikumsai, his kaimetz worth. I would have think he could even do it with his fingertips. Again, we'll see pictures. Like people do. How do you do it? You put in 3 fingers, and you knock off the end of that which they hold. Says the Gemara, and you knock off the end of the old. And let's say you have a flat pan, mincha is a type of mincha, or the deep pan mincha, moichek bigoidlai milmaila. Ubetzboy kitana milmata. Then you smooth out the kaimetz with your thumb, like we just showed, and with the little finger. V'zuhi avoda kasha shebemikdash. This is the difficult avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, to take the three fingers and smooth it out with your pinky and your thumb, in order to make sure you have precisely the kaimetz, the flour, inside your three fingers. Let's see a little bit further, and then we'll show the pictures that I said. Zuhi v'sulai. This is it. Va'ika malika. Malika is when the kohen had to grow his thumb in order to check the bird. He would check the bird with his thumb. It's a very difficult avodah. Hoika chafina, our Mishnah, the chafina of the keteiros, which also you had to grab with your hands. It's also very difficult. Ella zui avoid may avoid this kasha b'mikdash. This is of the difficult avodas in the Beis Hamikdash. So let's go. Here we see a few pictures. Here we see, says the Gemara becomes, you see he's taking the three fingers worth and he's knocking off the top and the bottom. Here you see mivuratz. Says the Gemara had a shayla that maybe it means it should be overflowing. And the Gemara said no. Said the Gemara, here we see, and this is actually going to be the next Gemara, but let's, once the picture is open in front of us, let's just look at it before we see weiter. Says the Gemara, when you take that kaimetz, there's a potentially different areas. There's the gavai, you could have a bit sticking out of your hands. The bra, you could have a bit sticking inside. Then you could have beini ubeini sticking between your fingers. And the Gemara is going to know what's the story with each and every one of those stages. So says the Gemara, 4 lines from the top, Amar Rav Yochanan, Bai Rav Yeshua ben Uzia, Bein habinim shal mahu. What is the halacha of that which is stuck between your fingers? Like we just saw in the picture. What do you do with the extra kaimes, extra flour that's stuck in your fingers? Amar Papa. That which on the inside is not a shayla. That's part of the kaimetz. That which on the outside, that's leftovers. What's stuck between your fingers? What's the halacha? He answered, Yeshua ben Uzia, bein habinim, safik ninu. It's a safik. So of course everyone wonders, what's the teretz? If it's a safik, what do I do? So the answer is, Mefarshim here explain, particularly the Ritva, is that this is something called an inherent suffix, like we learned many times in Gemara and Shabbos, Bein Hashmashes, we says it's inherently, it's quasi-suffix, it's quasi-day, quasi-night, it's something that will forever be a suffix, forever be a doubt. So too says the Gemara, that which is between your fingers is inherently a suffix. So says the Gemara, okay, Gavaldik, but now the Gemara wants to know, so what should you do with that suffix piece that's stuck between your fingers? You first take the kaimetz of the mincha and you bring that as a carbon, then you bring those little pieces. Why? Because if you go and you first bring the piece between your fingers, and we're not sure, so maybe it's called leftovers. And then what you're going to be doing is burning the leftovers between the act of kamisa, which is the act of separating la'aktar and the burning, and that is not allowed. You're not allowed to do that. You have to do the kaimet and you have to burn it right away. You're not allowed to burn the excess in between. So says the Gemara, particularly this excess, the piece between your fingers, you burn after you burn the kaimet. Says the Gemara, if that's accurate, Ashanami Ikri Khan, says the Gemara, why don't we say the same thing over here? Why don't we say the same thing, that anything that is part of, is mimenu leishim, which is part of something that goes on the mizbeach, is part of the isser not to burn it. So how are you allowed to burn it? Amar Rav Yehuda Rav Shimon. Says Rav Yehuda brother of Shimon ben Pazi, you're right. You can't burn it and have in mind that it is a kaimetz, it's a mincha. You have in mind that it's just like burning wood. That you don't bring up the leftovers of as a reach nichayach, as a carbon, rather you bring it up just as wood. Says the Gemara, fascinating teretz. According to the Rabbanim, that doesn't allow you to burn this part that's between your fingers. You know what you have to do? You have to go and have a kohen with fat fingers. Because if you have a regular kohen, what's going to happen is get something stuck between his fingers. According to the Rabbanim, they hold that you're supposed to eat meat, you're not allowed to burn. So this little piece stuck between your fingers, you're not allowed to burn it. So you're not allowed to. So you have to go and get a kohen with fat fingers, Kamitzi the Shamni, so then nothing gets stuck. Says the Gemara, we're going to say the same thing, that you should get a kohen with fat fingers in order to make sure nothing gets stuck. That is the kamitza, that is the separating of the flour for the carbon mincha. One of the avoides kashais. We're going to stop over here because from here is going to begin a new discussion tomorrow. Amir Tzashem.